Greenlight Network presents Football Time.
Hey, welcome to the Football Time Show. We're here for our NFL Week 1 review. It was quite a Week 1. I think we're going to get into some games. Some interesting teams made some wins. Some interesting teams made some comebacks. And a lot of teams put on the dominant show that we thought they would. So what did you make of Week 1, Achilles?
Super exciting. The fact that we have the NFL back, gives us something to look forward to. And we have an extended season too, so that's kind of got me really riled up. But I'm ready to talk some stats and some games and some results. So let's get into this.
Yeah. All right. So let's start off with our mutual picks. We went 3-2 overall in our mutuals. And we'll start out with the first game, the Seattle Seahawks +2 versus the Indianapolis Colts here. Seattle won 28-16, and I think that score is being kind in this game. Seattle really dominated it from the start. Russell Wilson had 4 touchdown passes in this game. They ran the ball for 140 yards and threw for about 254. Carson Wentz was sort of his normal inconsistent self. Looked really good in spots, looked really poor decision-making wise in spots, but Seattle's defense managed to hold Jonathan Taylor to about 54 yards rushing, and they couldn't seem to find too much deep in the passing game. Pittman Jr. was held to just 29 yards. It was mostly checkdowns to Jonathan Taylor and Naheem Hines. So what'd you make of this game? What'd you make of Seattle's opening win here on the road in Indianapolis?
As far as the offense for the Indianapolis Colts is concerned, I kind of mentioned it a little bit during our preview. I thought that, even with T.Y. taking that hometown discount, there wasn't a lot of firepower in terms of wide receiver. So we kind of figured that a lot of the offense would be focused around the running backs, kind of like it was last season, even with Rivers under helm, which a lot of checkdowns and runs and screens and, bootlegs, things like that. I think that Carson gives them a different ability as opposed to Rivers by being a little bit younger and slightly more mobile. But I think their offense kind of went the way we thought it was going to go. We both talked about it in our last show. We thought Seattle could easily take this one. We just thought they were a more complete team. We couldn't quite understand the line, which is one of the reasons why we took this game. But overall, I think it was a pretty entertaining game, and I think it's a little bit of a tell as far as what these teams are going to look like as the season progresses.
Yeah, I must say I was really, really impressed with the Seattle offense. It really seemed to go well together here. A lot of deep shots taken, but they still had that good sort of first and second down run progression that they like to do. It kept the defense in the game. They didn't have that open style that they had to start last year. So was really impressed. Now, that being said, Russell Wilson tends to get off the hot starts. He always makes his MVP case in September. He started out again to make his MVP case in September. We can see if he can carry that on into December this year. But I think my most impressive thing was that Seattle offense. I really, really thought it looked really, really good over there. They found Lockett on a couple deep balls, made a really nice catch on that huge bomb they hit, managed to get Chris Carson involved. And then towards the end, they found DK Metcalf for a nice play as well.
Yeah, and as you mentioned it, the fact that they were able to kind of get in such a good rhythm, even when Metcalf wasn't even involved in the offense early on. As I was looking at the stats for that game, I was surprised that he hadn't really done anything. He came alive towards the end of that second half, but just goes to show you that Seattle is very versatile and they can attack you in many different ways. It doesn't just have to be their big wideout.
Yeah, another shout out to Gerald Everett coming over from the Rams. I think it sort of helped both guys. Really, we'll get into Tyler Higbee's day as well coming up here. But I thought Everett played well. It was nice to have sort of a tight end in the mix for Seattle. They haven't always utilized that tight end spot too much, but I thought Gerald Everett played pretty well in this game as well.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's been a while since Russell Wilson has had a versatile back like him. Not that he's super great at blocking, but he can hold his own when it comes to the blocking game. And he's also very physical route runner. He can get out there and he can really, beat up on those linebackers out there.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up something from the Colts. Wanted to get your opinion on it. This Colts line probably 3-4 years ago, I think we were probably putting it up there as one of the best offensive lines in probably football at that point in time. Last year, I think there was a little bit of a slippage, and this week, I wasn't impressed with them at all. I thought there was even more slippage. Now, Quentin Nelson was just coming back off the foot injury. It just seems they aren't quite as dominant as they were, 2-3 years ago when they were sitting there protecting Andrew Luck in that pocket. And you saw a little bit of slippage last year, but you didn't know how much of that was to, an old Phillip Rivers sort of holding the ball and being in the pocket. But I was less than impressed with Indianapolis's line play in this one. Do you think that slippage continues going on into the season, or do you think this is just game one, let them find their mesh point, let Quentin Nelson get a few games under his belt after having not really played in the preseason, or do you see it continuing to slip and maybe it's causing some problems here, especially for that running game, which is so important to Indianapolis on the offensive side of things?
It's funny the way you put that, because when I think about it, it seems like that last year that Andrew Luck played, it seems like he was kind of getting beat up a lot. Just if memory serves me correct, I feel like the offensive line was actually much worse back then than it was this previous season with Rivers under center. That being said, you're going to hear me say a lot, especially this particular week, week one. I'll probably say it a few more times throughout this show. It's week one.
It's week one with an extra game too.
Correct. So and one less preseason game. So you also got to take all that stuff into account. I wouldn't put too much stock in that offensive line, deteriorating, getting worse. I think that the unit has changed. There's been a few players that were there a few years ago that aren't there anymore. And sometimes it takes a little while to mesh, even if it is the same group of people. Sometimes it takes a few games to kind of get into that, that rhythm. So I wouldn't be too concerned about it just yet. But if this continues, then it's probably something to look at.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to ask you, not on this game, but overall, it's become more and more the norm in preseason to not really give a lot of the starters a lot of the playing time. Most of them sit out. I don't think even any of your Rams starters even touched a preseason snap. And I think we saw sloppiness in a lot of the games in week one, especially now with a reduced preseason. Do you like the call of sort of these first 4 games are technically probably more of a preseason outlook? You're just trying to find your rhythm to get into that sort of second, third half of the season to make your push. What do you make of that? Do you like it, or do you think this they should at least tune up a little bit more than they have been in the preseason?
I think it really depends on the situation. If you're, let's say, in a division like the NFC East, and obviously it's early on, so I'm not trying to jump the ship here, but we kind of assume that they're all going to be pretty close, but all not great teams. So it gives you a little more leverage as far as starting off slow. If you play in a tougher division like the NFC West, for example, they all win the first game. If anyone were to lose a game in, week one, which on paper doesn't matter, but when you look at the division standings for a tough division as it is, and those guys start gaining on you, early on in the season, sometimes it really takes away, it sucks the motivation to, really make a push, because it's hard to climb back when those teams are so tough and you have to play them twice every season. So I think it depends on the scenario. I personally myself don't mind it. I'm not a huge gambler first 3 weeks of the season. Obviously we're doing this because of the show, but I always look at the first at least quarter of the season, first, third of the season as kind of a warm up. I think the teams tend to find their flow as it progresses.
Yeah, definitely so. I'm sort of hot and cold on it. I don't really like the preseason, and it's not something I enjoy. But I do think maybe, I mean, they aren't going to do it because it's all money involved, but maybe not preseason, but at least they have scrimmages where these guys can get in and play some games. So, these first couple weeks aren't necessarily so sloppy. I mean, some of the teams look good, and, some of the teams who didn't play their guys looked pretty solid. It just seems, this first couple weeks 1, 2, 3, maybe even into 4, that's really the preseason where teams are finding to their rhythm, and it's just hard to make judgments on them in week 1. It just a little weird, I think. Whereas, probably in the 90s, early 2000s, when we were watching, guys would play all that preseason. Then by week 1, everything was ramped up and ready to go, more so than it is now.
You're right. I agree with you. But I think a lot of that happened when they negotiated that new CBA.
Yeah.
Because really what went away from what we remember in football is the practice and pads. You don't have that anymore. That was what everybody kind of looked forward to. That's when you were going to get physical. And that's when you were going to start really pulling the starters, that 53-man roster, away from the guys that might make the practice squad. But I'll tell you one thing, as a Ram fan, I really, my team was really bad for a long time. As a matter of fact, I'm wearing a St. Louis sweater. That goes to show you how far back I've been rooting for them. And I was rooting for them even before they went to St. Louis. So anyways, that's neither here nor there, but they were really bad for a stretch. And I learned really quickly that the preseason itself, as boring as it may seem for a lot of people, for those teams that are constantly, down in the basement, it's a really good time for player development. And for those teams that don't have a lot of depth and are very limited with cap space, like the Rams are this season, it's really important because you really know, all right, we only have a limited amount of money, limited amount of space. These are the guys that we can go with. So as boring as it may seem, it's really important.
Yeah. All right. We'll move on to our next game. And it was another win. The Los Angeles Rams versus the Chicago Bears. This was pretty much a mauling throughout. The Bears got a little bit of perky, I'd say, in that maybe around that third quarter area, but I don't think it was ever really in doubt. David Montgomery ran really, really well for the Bears, but their defense didn't hold up all that well. Stafford passed for 321 yards. Henderson ended up with about 70 yards rushing. Kupp really was dominant and getting open deep all day long on them for 108 yards. And Van Jefferson hit that big play at the start of the game. Bears didn't really have any passing game really to speak of. A couple plays to Godwin, a couple plays to Robinson, but 34-14 overall for the Los Angeles Rams. What'd you make of game 1 here for the Rams?
I'll be honest with you. I was excited. I was a little nervous because, I kept hearing all the hype about Matthew Stafford and how he's a huge improvement over Jared Goff. And, I wasn't sure because all I've seen Stafford do is put up stats in meaningless games because they don't win games. But he came out, and even without preseason, without, being able to get out there and really try against an opposing team, he looked good. He looked sharp. There were a few instances where, the offensive line kind of crumbled a little bit. But for the most part, the offensive line played really well, especially against those guys in the front seven of Chicago. The teams, when you think about the Bears, we don't think of them as a super, scary team or anything like that. But they do have some guys on defense. They have some studs out there, and they can get after you and they can cause some trouble if you allow them to. And it seemed like at some point they might get there, but I think overall the entire team played a really good game. It was it was a very cohesive, win for the team, especially for a team that didn't get to practice or play in preseason.
Yeah, I thought they looked pretty sharp. Stafford looked solid. They got a couple plays from Van Jefferson. I think that's really, really important to find somebody who can give them, a handful of those deep plays, because I like Kupp and I love Woods, but those are more sort of slot in between guys who, get more run after the catch yards. I think they need somebody to stretch that field ever since they've lost Brandon Cooks. So it was good to see that. I mentioned Tyler Higbee. I thought he played really well, and we talked about it in our preview show, how we thought Higbee might be able to break out with Gerald Everett out there. I don't think he's probably quite the blocker, Gerald Everett is, but he's really good on the pass catching side of things. So I think that can be enough of a weapon there. The running game didn't really get going all that much, until the, last couple series in the games. When the game was over, any concern about that? I thought once, Henderson found a little bit of rhythm, I thought he ran well, but, early in the game, they weren't even trying it all that much, but running game would be the only thing I thought the offense was a little bit shaky on in that one.
Offensively, I don't think there was much to really concern me. Like, I understand that the running game, wasn't really, something to fear or anything like that. But to me, I think the most telling story of this game was the Rams rushing defense. I feel like there were several instances. I know Montgomery's a really good back, but there were several instances where they had him wrapped up and they just couldn't bring him down. And this is something that the Rams have had issues with over the last couple of seasons. I know last season they were really good against the run overall on yards, but they would give up big plays. They were susceptible to giving up big plays. And it seems to be, they mentioned it during the game that the Rams seem to play like an umbrella type of defense where everyone's kind of, almost like a zone type of thing where they're daring you to run the ball. And if you're going to give chunks like that and not tackle, teams are going to start running the ball on you. But thankfully, like I said, I'm not worried about the offense, and I think the offense is good enough to even allow, teams to kind of establish a run and still be able to at least compete in games.
Yeah, I think that was the other thing that was probably the biggest question mark. I did think Montgomery found holes and broke some tackles. Now, you don't know how much of that was just scheme is, we're going to let him run. We're going to let him get his yards. We just won't let them pass, all that much. And, I don't even think the Bears were capable of passing. Dalton was on his back foot and getting pressured, pretty much every time. And as you know, shocking, Jason Peters lasted about a quarter and a half. I'm stunned the oversized 40-year-old offensive lineman couldn't complete a full NFL game. But I think that was the only thing that was a little bit concerning was, they did seem to give up some holes up front. Now, like I said, you don't know how much of that is scheme, but, in games that are meaningful with teams that have really good rushing attacks and then can play off the play action, we mentioned it like a Seattle, that becomes probably a little bit more concern if it's a thing that happens more so as we get deeper in the season.
But I do want to give a quick shout out to the Chicago Bears. I know that they didn't play a great game.
They played hard, though.
As poor as people assumed they were going to be, I feel like they played hard. Even Andy Dalton, he had a pretty bad performance. If it wasn't for that pick he threw in the end zone, he has at least a touch and it looks respectable. So I feel like the Bears are at least trending the right way. They played against a very tough Rams team, even though it was week 1, and this would have been the perfect opportunity to catch the Rams off guard. I still think they played hard. So I just want to give a quick shout out to them.
Yeah, I definitely thought they played hard. And, of teams that were playing out of that NFC Central. They all lost, mind you, but I thought the Bears at least competed, whereas Green Bay, Minnesota, Detroit, I don't think you can totally say that. Now, Detroit had the fun miracle finish. We'll get into that. But that game was also like 43-17 with 2 minutes to go. So it wasn't exactly like Detroit was racking up things until they somehow managed like 4 possessions in a 2-minute stretch. But, I did think the Bears competed. Montgomery looked good. The passing game in the line is going to be an issue all year long. I do think the secondary's pretty weak, so they are very, very dependent on that front 7 getting pressure. And you mentioned it, the Rams line held up pretty well there, so the Bears struggled on the offensive side of things on that one. All right, we'll go to our next game, and this one was a loser. I think we were both pretty off on this one. Denver ended up beating up on the Giants here, 27-13 in this one. The Giants were 2.5-point dogs. It was a pretty close game. Broncos made a couple plays in there to stretch this lead out, but if you really watch the game, the Broncos were just the better team. Giants didn't, I think, offer really anything up too much on offense. Their line was absolutely atrocious. Barkley had no running lanes. Daniel Jones put up cosmetic sort of numbers, but I didn't think he looked all that good. And of course, he had his fumble that he has to have every game that certainly goes in there. Yeah. Broncos, I thought, looked okay. Teddy Bridgewater did Teddy Bridgewater things. That rushing attack really looked good, gained 165 yards. Sadly, Judy's probably they say it's a severe ankle sprain, which actually might be worse than a break, but maybe they get him back at some point. But he was really dominating the game till he got hurt. But what'd you make of this Broncos-Giants game here?
You know, I do have to come clean. This is one of the few games that I didn't get to watch a lot of because when this game was on, I was stuck on Red Zone. But what I did catch were, you know, what they usually do on Red Zone, which is the highlights. I gotta say, I don't know why, but I have a little thing for, you know, for the Giants and their young quarterback. I don't know what it is. I see a toughness in him. I see, you know, he's very competitive, and it's almost like doesn't matter what the score is. He's going to keep trying. He's going to keep coming at you. Right now, I understand this team has a lot of growing up to do, and you know they still have some building to do to get to where they want to be. But you know, if they can get Jones some legit weapons and they can build, you know, a good offensive line to give him some protection, I think this kid can take you somewhere. I think he's got some potential. I really like what I see from him. And these are the intangibles. I'm not talking about, you know, his posture or his, you know, his arm or his throwing motion. I'm just talking about, you know, his intangibles. I really like what I see. And I think that going forward, this team's going to get better. As the longer they play together and stay healthy, I think they're going to get better.
Yeah, I guess I could see it. I just see too many turnovers from him. And that's just something that's going to cost you games, especially with the way this Giants team play, which, you know, it's always going to be a close game. This one was, you know, a close game. And, you know, that fumble really, really hurt them really bad. Pretty impressed with the Broncos to go there and get you know, a road win. That's a tough thing to do. That gets them off to a pretty good mark. I mentioned the Judy injury, though. That really, really, you know, hurts. They do have some receiver depth, but, you know, I think Judy was going to sort of start to put himself into an elite place in the receiver category. And with him going down, that, you know, just takes a little bit of a nick on this offense. You know, it hurts Teddy Bridgewater a little bit, he's not the kind of quarterback who's going to win you games. He's just going to, you know, sort of keep you there. And without Judy there, it just is a weapon that goes away. But impressed overall with the Broncos. I thought they played really, really solid. I thought their defense was pretty good. The Giants defense I thought was all right. But it just seemed to come and go. It found spots where it gave up too many big plays.
Yeah, and I think that goes into them having to grow up and, you know, really develop an identity for themselves. I don't think they're quite there yet, but like I said, they've shown me certain things that I like about them. But, you know, overall, you got to give props where props are due. And the Broncos came out and they won this one. So congratulations to the Broncos.
Yeah. All right. We'll move to our next game. We got the win on this one. We had the Arizona Cardinals versus Tennessee Titans over first half, 24.5. And, all that
who scored?
All that propaganda about the Titans defense being an upgrade. Sadly, that was not true. I somehow think it was worse than last year's defense. And that being said, the offense couldn't block Chandler Jones and couldn't get anybody going in this one. So, Arizona just lit Tennessee up pretty much from the start to finish. I know Mike Bravel tried to blame Julio Jones for his personal foul penalty when it was 10-0, and that was what swung the game, but what swung the game was their bad defense and the ability not to get Derrick Henry involved in the game and really having no yards. But Murray was exceptional in this game. 289, 4 touchdowns. Did have a pick, but was able to control this game, really hit explosive plays. I thought all the receivers on Arizona looked really, really good. Now, how much of that is the Titans secondary? I don't know, but Hopkins had a big day, 83 for 2 touch. Kirk was running wide open down there at 70 yards and 2 touch. Rondell Moore had 68 yards receiving. So just a good overall day for the Arizona Cardinals and Tennessee Titans. Defense, still an issue. What'd you make of this one?
Now, you're probably going to hate that I'm doing this, but and just so we're clear, I'm not doing this to defend Dynamite, okay? Because as we all know, he's a huge Titans fan, okay? So
it was a very sad Sunday.
hey, you just kept egging him on too. That was oh gosh, I couldn't stop laughing. I was just reading those texts laughing. But I'll tell you this, okay? I think this was more about the Tennessee Titans coming in flat-footed and that defense not being any better than they were last year, if that makes any sense. I don't think this was so much about the Cardinals. To me, and this goes against what you said, but when I look at Kyler Murray, like, to me, he's the exact same quarterback that I saw last season. I saw him make some throws that were questionable at best. I saw him make a lot of plays, and a lot of times he makes bad throws, bad decisions. They just happen to work out for him. He's got a God-given talent to be able to scramble around and, evade tacklers. Part being small probably helps him too. He's quick, he's fast, he's agile, but he never stops looking downfield. And sometimes that's, also a nick on your armor because he threw a couple balls that very easily could have been picked. He just happened to have completed them. So we look at him, we're like, oh, Kyler Murray, you're great. But I really hope for his sake and for any Arizona Cardinal fans out there, for their sake, I hope that this is just week one, jitters and, game one, because if he keeps making mistakes like these against teams like Seattle, against teams like Tampa Bay, they're not going to be as easygoing, as the Titans secondary was. They're going to make you pay. So I really hope he settles down. I know that he's got some nice shiny weapons on the outside, but it seems like that defense plays a lot better now. If he can rely on that defense, play smart, don't hurt yourself, don't overdo anything, they'll be fine. But again, to me, he's the same Kyler Murray of last season.
Yeah, we'll see if he can sort of put, games together where it's not just one and then a couple bad ones and then another good one. Consistency would be the name of the game. But you said it, you mentioned the Cardinals defense. That really was the star of this game. They looked really explosive along that front four. And then the linebackers there also looked really, really dominant in this game. I still have some questions about the secondary. We'll see how that goes in games where they can block that front four. Tennessee really couldn't take advantage of that. We mentioned Henry couldn't get going because that front seven was so much in the backfield. Therefore, the play action game couldn't really get going, and we couldn't get, A.J. Brown and Julio Jones matched up on those corners like we wanted. And then this game was just a runaway and, over by the third quarter. But I guess we have to bring it up. It is week one. It's probably time to overreact. But, Derrick Henry has had a ton of carries the last 2 years. Is there any worry that, it's sort of that running back falling off a cliff here? We mentioned it a little bit in our preview show, but he had that tough game versus the Ravens to exit the playoffs. And then this one, he just couldn't find a hole, couldn't get going. How much do you make of that of the Tennessee line? How much do you make of that of maybe, 600 carries in 2 years, starting to have a little bit of wear and tear on that body?
I said it during the preseason, previews. I think there's definitely a little bit of wear and tear, but I don't think it's enough to make a huge impact on such a great running back like Derrick Henry. I honestly think that his performance this game is a mixture of a couple things. One, the way the game was playing itself out. They were down early, and it seemed like they really couldn't keep their offense on the field long enough to, kind of get that ground game going. I believe I checked at one point, and I believe it's like second quarter, maybe halftime, and I think he had 7 carries. We're talking about Derrick Henry, a guy who's broken 2,000 yards, and you have 7 carries going into halftime. That just boggles my mind. So I think that was one of the factors that played into it. And second, it's just a game plan. That you got to put that on the coach. I don't care what the score is. Whatever can be done in one half can be done in the second half. So at some point, you have to establish some sort of balance. I know that the Cardinals were playing really stout run defense, but I don't think that's an excuse for not trying. I don't think the attempts were there. Derrick Henry's not the kind of guy who's going to burst off every time. He's a workhorse. You got to give him a good load, and he's going to break a few. And I just don't think they gave him enough tries.
Yeah, we'll see how that sort of shapes out. They got another tough one going to Seattle this week. So, it might get worse before it gets better for the Tennessee Titans here. We'll see if that defense can step up any in week 2 here. So we move to our last game in the mutuals, and we got a little beef here. I had broken up with this. We had split ways. I was dating stewardess. They were dating club promoters. The world was a happy place. And then you come in and get us back together. Oh, I really liked you two together. You were great together. We loved you together. So we get back together. And once again, this toxic relationship goes sour. And it's a bad one. And then nonetheless, now you have me second guessing myself on my side piece of the Philadelphia Eagles and questioning whether they might be good. So the Atlanta Falcons, possibly the worst team of the weekend. This game was brutal, beyond brutal. The Falcons were awful on defense. They were awful on offense. The Philadelphia Eagles look like the second coming of their Super Bowl team. Jalen Hurts was able to throw for 264 yards, run for 62 yards, throw 3 touchdowns. Miles Sanders was able to run on him. Devontae Smith, Jalen Reagor, Dallas Goedert were all running all over the place on them. What is your explanation for this game, my friend?
Well, listen, I'm going to start by defending myself. Okay. And I'm just going to say, I talked Jalen Hurts up last season. I talked about how the Philadelphia Eagles were better with him at quarterback.
I want you to talk about you getting me back into a toxic relationship with the Atlanta Falcons. And now making me love on my side piece the Philadelphia Eagles, who I'm going to think are good.
See, this is where you're mistaken, okay? Because unlike you, I don't mind listening to myself talk. So I went back and I looked at our previous show, and I believe you were the one selling me on the Falcons.
I don't believe so. I broke up with the Falcons in the summer.
No, I broke up with the Falcons last season.
You were in love with Matthew Ryan. You were telling me all about Kyle Pitts and his fast moves and how Calvin Ridley was going to be the greatest receiver ever and how Mike Davis was a good running back. And then somehow Cordell Patterson ends up as the best player on the floor and playing halfback. This Falcons team is awful, I think.
I think we just take our L here and talk about the game a little bit.
All right. Let's just ignore the Falcons. They were terrible, both sides of the ball. I don't know what to say about them. Their offense looked atrocious. Their defense looked even more atrocious. Let's talk about this Eagles team. What do you make of them? Do you think this is something that can be continued? I was impressed with how they sort of tailored the offense to Jalen Hurts' skill set, how they tailored the offense to everyone on this team's skill set, and that front seven rushed the passer really, really well. Atlanta couldn't take advantage of the secondary. So were we wrong about this Eagles team? Are they going to be good, or is just just week one, they played a terrible team, and they become a pumpkin here in the next couple weeks.
Okay, so I'm not going to say that we were wrong about them, but I'm also not going to say we were right. I think we said it several times, and we said it even going to last season. Their pass rush is probably their best asset on that team. Philadelphia can get after the quarterback in certain games. When they can't, that's when their secondary gets exposed, and they had very little offense to speak of last season. So that's one of the reasons why they were so bad. This season, we thought that they'd be a little settled in. They brought in a couple of pieces in on offense to at least improve it somewhat. Defensively, there weren't big changes, but we did say that we still thought they could get after the quarterback, if they're put in a good situation. That's what happened here. And I don't know how much of that is Atlanta being really bad or it's just week one. But of course, it's overreaction. Well, it's Tuesday now, but yeah, I guess we're just going to overreact and we're just going to say that, the Eagles are good and Atlanta's bad. But in reality, I think that this raises more questions about Philadelphia than it actually answers.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see how they do going forward. I'm rooting for Jalen Hurts and this Eagles side. I really like Jalen Hurts. I want him to be, a good NFL quarterback. We'll see if they're able to tailor this into that sort of thing. And they sort of are the surprise team of both the NFC East and the NFC. We'll see in the weeks to come. So we finished 3-2 on our mutual picks. So that's not bad in the money. If someone hadn't talked me into a former lover, then we probably would have had a better record overall. But anyway, 3-2 to start the season on our mutual picks. Not too bad. My picks went 7-2-1 on the week. So I had a hot week overall. My first pick was Arizona plus the 3 versus the Tennessee Titans. We already talked about that game. Next up, I had the Washington football team plus 1 versus the LA Chargers. I thought the Chargers really looked good in this game. I didn't think Washington looked great. Then Ryan Fitzpatrick got hurt, and actually I thought the Washington looked better once Heineke came in there. But what'd you make of this game? 2016 for the Chargers. Herbert threw for 337, touchdown, interception. Allen, Williams, Cook all sort of beat up on that Washington secondary. I didn't think the Washington defense played all that well. Gibson looked pretty good for Washington, but that was about it. What'd you make of this game?
There was a couple of storylines that I took from this. One was the loss of Fitzpatrick for at least half of the season. I believe it's going to be like 8 weeks or so. He's not on IR, is he?
I didn't see if they put him on there, but I'd be a little worried. Old quarterback, hip injury. That's not really something that you just pop right back from, especially with a quarterback.
So that's probably the first storyline is the Fitzpatrick injury and him not being available for the majority of the season. Does this help or, maybe develop or bring along? I don't know what we saw him play last season.
Yeah.
Fitzpatrick.
Heineke.
Yeah. I always want to call him Heineken for some reason, but we saw him play last season and we weren't too impressed. I can't say that there has to be much of an improvement there this season if he was chosen to be the backup to an aging, not to be offensive, but an aging journeyman quarterback. That just probably tells you where he's at, at least skill wise. The next thing was Herbert. I think he's legit. I kind of expected him to have at least for week one, a little bit of a slump, kind of rust, the hype off of last season, rookie of the year. But he looked good, man. He made some really nice throws. He has a cannon for an arm. The guy can throw the ball. And it doesn't hurt that he's got, a really underrated wide receiver like we talked about during the preview in Keenan Allen. And even Eckler had a good game. I think that Chargers, although still probably not good, I think they're definitely better than they were last season. I think that it's probably a team that we have to keep our eye on.
Yeah, I came away probably most impressed by this Chargers defense. you won't be surprised that Derwin James came back and was like the highest graded player on their defensive side of things. So, if him and Bosa stay healthy, this defense could be a little bit better than we thought. I thought it was really impressive the way the offense went in there and beat Washington in Washington cross country. So this Charger team might be pushing there for a playoff spot if they can win games like this, because this is the type of game they need to win to get into that playoff position here. So a really, really impressive game. I thought defensively, it showed the defense can play with the offense. It showed the offense can sort of find yards versus a pretty good Washington defense. We'll be curious to see how Washington does. I think that's the most things I come away with here is, I was pretty bullish that thinking Washington was going to be good coming into the season. The offense looked poor. The defense didn't look bad, but it didn't look, on an elite level like they would need to be, say, when we get to the, Pittsburgh Steelers game. The Pittsburgh Steelers game won them that game versus the Buffalo Bills. The Washington defense had to win them this game versus the Chargers. They weren't capable of doing that. I maybe have a couple more questions this week about the Washington football team, but I come away really, really impressed by the Chargers here.
Yeah, I agree. I think that they're going to be exciting going forward. We'll just have to see if they can keep it up.
Yeah. All right. Next up, I pushed on this game, but actually by Saturday, the line was down to 3.5. So the Carolina Panthers beat the New York Jets, and I wouldn't go as far as an entertaining game, a football game. I think I mentioned the Jets scare me because they backdoor cover this thing, and Carolina was up, I believe, about 19-8, and then Jets got a token score there at the end and couldn't come all the way back. But Darnold looked pretty solid. McCaffrey was ridiculously good as always. 100 yards rushing, like 90 yards receiving. DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson made plays. I thought the Carolina defense looked okay. You don't know how much of that is this bad sort of Jets team, losing that offensive tackle that they drafted in the first round. For the Jets is really, really going to hurt them even more. So it'll be interesting to see how the Jets deal with this. Their defense was already decimated in the preseason by injuries, and then they lose their tackle in the opening game for the season. So the Jets, things sort of get worse. I thought Zach Wilson played pretty well. What'd you make of this game?
I mean, other than McCaffrey going off, especially when he was going up against me in fantasy, listen, it was a game between two teams that are considered to be in some sort of rebuild mode. One's probably further ahead than the other, and the outcome probably shows you which one is which. With that being said, kind of nice if you're from, you're a Jets fan or you're from that area. And there's a little bit of a storyline here. Darnold going up against his old team. So, entertainment, but, not too exciting. It's just, like I said, two teams that are just trying to build their way up. And we'll see what they have going forward. It's week one. I'm not putting too much into this. I think that both of them can still kind of turn it around either for the positive or the negative, but all that stuff remains to be seen. Yeah,
I think you mentioned it, sort of two rebuilding teams. Carolina's probably closer into their phase of, pulling out of that rebuild and wanting to contend for a playoff spot. They probably would like to contend for a playoff spot this year. We'll see if they can get there. Jets really just beginning their phase of rebuilding. What do you think of Zach Wilson? Good, bad, ugly, mixture of both?
I wouldn't say ugly. I saw a lot of good things. I saw some okay things. I saw some things he could clean up. But, overall, it's his first game. And, playing in New York, even if it's just the Jets, there's still a lot of pressure. The media is constantly, scrutinizing every little thing you do, whether it's good or bad. And, it's tough to start off like that, especially with the franchise that doesn't have very high expectations. So, I mean, I think that this is probably the best thing he could do right now is just go out there, play, and just get some experience under your belt. There's plenty of guys who started off just like that, and now they're in a much better place. So I'm not saying he's going to leave the Jets. I'm just saying their team is much better now.
Yeah. All right. We'll move on past that one and go to my next win, Seattle +2 versus Indianapolis. We already talked about that game. We go to one of our battles. I have the Cincinnati Bengals +3. You have the Minnesota Vikings -3. Well. How does it feel to be in the Kirk Cousins camp here?
I'm not used to this. I'm not used to me losing our head-to-heads.
Well, you keep backing Kirk Cousins and see where that gets you in head-to-heads. But Bengals played pretty well. Vikings played pretty awful. I will say great balance, 27 passes, 36 runs for the Cincinnati Bengals, 149 yards on the ground, 217 yards in the air. I don't know. I guess I have to give the defense credit for Cincinnati. I thought it played really, really well. How much of that was the atrocious Vikings offense? I don't know, but 27-24 overtime win for the Bengals. What did you make of this game?
I was keeping an eye on this one because it was one of our head-to-head matchups, and I don't know. I guess I just expected the Vikings defense to at least show up. And it seems like that defense just is not what it was a couple of seasons ago. I thought that at least they had enough firepower on offense with, Jefferson and Thielen and Cook. I thought that they could go out there and make enough plays even if their defense wasn't great, they could, come out on top, especially with the way the Bengals ended last year. I know that their quarterback got hurt and all that, but, that defense just is not what it was. And I don't see them being able to keep up, even with that, all the stars on offense. If that offense isn't clicking because the quarterback is so important, he played poorly, they're not going to be able to keep up with anybody. And I do want to give, a shout out to the Bengals and the coaching staff. This is how you run a game. This is a more balanced game. You don't want to throw the ball 61 times, your first game out with your rookie quarterback. So, you got to give them props. They came out, they won the game, and I got to give you props. You saw something that I didn't see, and you capitalized on it.
Yeah, I think the biggest is this is probably the bust that goes on Kirk Cousins, numbers, 36 of 49, 351 and 2 touchdowns. You look at that and think he's, the second coming of John Elway. And then you're like, well, yeah, but he was trailing the whole game. He couldn't lead them down to the game-winning touchdown. When they had 2 minutes left, they had to kick a 54-yard field goal just to tie it. He couldn't lead them in overtime when he had 2 chances on that side of the ball to get them any sort of points. And flashy numbers, no substance, and no win overall. You mentioned the Minnesota Vikings defense was not that impressive. And really, honestly, I think this team just hates each other. I literally think no one on this team likes anyone else on their team. Like, this is go in the locker room, put on your pads, come out, play the game, shower, go home. I don't think there are a lot of team dinners going on in this Minnesota Vikings locker room. I'm curious, coaching-wise, how long leash do you think this Minnesota Vikings team has before they make a change on the coaching side of things?
I mean, I think it's this season. I think that they've had too many circumstances over the last couple of seasons. They were at least sniffing the possibility of getting into a wild card. And if they seem to be, trending the opposite way that you want to be trending, they seem to be, on downward trends. And hopefully this is a roller coaster type of situation where, they're going down, but that's just to pick up more speed to go up that hill, because if they continue, playing the way they're playing, at least week 1, I know it's only week 1, but if they continue playing like this, they're not going to win a lot of games. And, I think that they're seriously going to have to consider making a change at the coaching level.
Yeah, I think so too. We'll see if something happens in season. I don't know if they go that far, but we'll see how bad it gets for the Vikings. Before we close out this game, you think the Bengals are maybe a little better than we thought? They are in a very, very tough division. Or do you think this is just a bad Vikings team who came in there and, Cincinnati took a bit of advantage of the situation?
I don't know. I mean, it's hard to really say that someone took advantage of the situation when they are preparing for it. That's their job, is to put themselves in the right spot, either both mentally and physically. And they came out prepared. It seemed like they were, they weren't going to be looked past. They weren't going to, be underlooked, undervalued. They came in and they basically said they were going to make a statement. This is the type of thing we're going to be this season. And hopefully they keep playing that way going forward. But like you said, it's a very tough division they're playing in. And they're going to have to keep playing this way and better if they're going to want to compete. Obviously, it's a step in the right direction, but there's still a long way to go.
Yeah, we'll see with the Cincinnati Bengals, but this was a fun win to have right off the start. Next up, we talked about the Giants plus 2.5 of the Denver Broncos. I had that one. That was a loss. Next up, I had a combo package in the Dolphins plus 3 over the Patriots and the Dolphins Patriots under 43. Double wins on that one. But this Dolphins New England game, we speak about sloppy games. This was a pretty sloppy game, sort of from both sides of the ball. Dolphins come out the winner, but I don't know. New England should have won this game, but they made poor decisions. I thought Tua played well until that one interception, which was, you just can't throw up balls down the field like that. But what'd you make of this game? 17-16 for the Dolphins win here.
I was trying to catch this one on NFL replay, and what I saw, at some point they took Tua out, and I was trying to figure out why they took him out.
That was just Brissett to run third and ones, because he's that big bodied quarterback, to sneak.
Okay, that makes sense. Because when I was watching it, I'm like, okay, he hasn't played horrible to this point. I'm like, I don't understand what they're doing here. I think this is probably, a good story, a feel-good story for the Patriots. I think a lot of us thought that, yes, they had the potential to be good because they have one of the best coaches of all time, and they have some weapons. They finally decided to open up the wallet and pay some of these guys. So I think it's more telling for them. It's a feel-good story. They're relevant, at least to a level. So the Bills lost, the Jets lost. The Dolphins won, but, they lost too. So, I mean, they're only one game behind. Everyone else lost besides the team you faced off against. So you're not far off. All you got to do is Mac Jones looked okay. I mean, he didn't look great, but, I could see some of the things that they saw when they decided to draft the kid. I think that the future is bright, especially if they can kind of keep building around Jones. I don't know. I mean, not really much to say. I don't think there was too much going on in that game to really make a big story, but divisional opponent, Dolphins took care of business. What else can you say?
Yeah, good win for the Dolphins. I wasn't overly impressed with both sides. I mentioned the sloppy play. Did think Mac Jones played pretty well. He played like Mac Jones sort of does. Damian Harris was running the ball really, really well until he fumbled on the 10-yard line. It cost him the game pretty much there. There was a lot of hype with Ramondre Stevenson, who took his first carry, fumbled, and then missed a block and got Mac Jones smashed on the other one. So if he's even still on the roster by the weekend, I will be stunned. But that hype train got derailed a little bit, and then Brandon Bolden started taking his minutes. Aguilar, I thought, played pretty solid, but once again, I thought the receivers were lacking a little bit. They didn't utilize the tight ends as well as I thought. Jonnu had 42, Henry had 31, but that could be a little bit with that Dolphins secondary, who I think played really, really well. I think there are a couple questions here in the New England secondary. Waddle was taking advantage of him pretty good here. Now, Defon Gilmore is on IR right now. We'll see if he comes off of it. That will definitely help. But I thought New England's front seven played pretty solid, but I think that secondary needs a little work. We'll just see how New England progresses through here. But, I think a lot of people were expecting, 11, 10 wins here. I don't know if it's that type of team. I think they'll be in the hunt. But they look a bit like a 500 team here. Same with the Dolphins, but getting a big road win in New England, pretty big deal here. So good win for the Dolphins, but pretty sloppy game overall, I thought.
Yeah, I mean, I will say this. I think the race for second place in the AFC East is a lot closer than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, should be really, really interesting to see how these two teams sort of progress throughout the year. Next up, Rams, first half -4 for me, got that win. And then the last game of the week, Raiders +4.5 versus Baltimore, got that win. So that was a really, really entertaining game. Raiders came out a little bit slow, but that second half they sort of found a little bit of their offensive mojo, and then they played really well in overtime, then played really bad in overtime, and then got the victory in that one. But I thought both teams played well, and turnovers sort of decided it. Lamar fumbled twice, and Las Vegas took advantage of it.
Really quick, just to touch upon this game a little bit. I had a few bets. I got a little overconfident when it came to betting on the Monday Night Football game. This was because I hit, a few parlays on Sunday that I was like, I can afford to drop a few extra bucks on this one. And before you knew it, I had quite a few bets for one game. I had to go to work early in the morning the next day, so I watched as much as I could. I watched enough to feel confident that I'm going to hit my bets, and I went to sleep.
Oh, no.
Little do you know, first thing that happens when I wake up is I go into my betting app, and that's how my day started, okay? I ended up only hitting one of my 4 or 5 bets I had, so it wasn't a good Monday night for me, but, Raiders, kudos to them. I really thought that they were going to show up, and they showed up late to the party, but sometimes the cool kids show up late and take the pretty girl with them. So that's what happened this time.
Yeah. Good Raiders, passed the ball really, really well, handled that cover zero sort of coverage by Baltimore really well in that second half. Ravens, the only thing I thought they sort of got away from the running game, which, can be expected. I don't think Lamar had 12 carries for 86 yards, but, Williams hit a big one early, and then they didn't give him a ton of carries. Murray who had just gotten there like the day before. So it's sort of hard to judge. Like I said, Baltimore, when I made this pick, I think it's going to take them a couple games to sort of find their rhythm on that running game. I thought Lamar passed it pretty well, for 235. Watkins and Brown both had pretty decent games. Andrews was a little off, but I didn't really downgrade the Ravens too much in this. I just think it's going to take them a couple games due to the injuries they've had and to sort of refine themselves in this one. But I did think the Raiders played well. The thing will be, can the Raiders play well again next week? I think will be the real question to see if they can sort of turn themselves into a playoff team.
I agree with you about the Ravens. I'm not putting too much on this. I think that they obviously had a couple injuries that really shifted their whole game plan and probably in their game plan going forward for the next couple of weeks. But I think they'll get better. I think, to me, the question here is going to be the Raiders, because that first half, it seemed like Derek Carr wanted to exclusively just go to Waller. I believe he had like 10 targets in the first half.
He had about 24 for the game.
I mean, at some point, it just became so predictable that it's probably one of the reasons why they had no success. Maybe he was just waiting. He was just trying to bore me to sleep. And once he bored me to sleep, he's like, okay, and I'm going to use my other weapons, because all I saw was him going to Waller, and it became very predictable. It's one of the reasons why the Ravens were up ahead in that game. But I guess when I fell asleep, things must have changed because the outcome didn't go in my favor.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how this Raiders team goes into week 2. See if they can continue to play this really sort of good offensive style of football. But so I've 7-2-1. You finished 3-4 on the week. We already discussed all the games you bet on. You had a L for the Atlanta Falcons -3, and L for the Tennessee Titans -3. Maybe bet on a team that can play defense and doesn't have Tennessee Titan defensive coordinators going with it. You got the win in the Arizona Cardinals, Tennessee Titans over first half, win in the Seattle Seahawks +2 over the Indianapolis Colts. We already mentioned your Minnesota Vikings loss versus Cincinnati Bengals. Your love of the New York Jets did not come through with you. First, the Denver Broncos and the LA Rams -4 first half was a winner for you. So 3-4 overall to start the year. Not too bad. One game off 500, but not a hot start to start the year.
It's a 17-week one, so there's no more 500. That's why.
All right. The games we didn't hit up on the betting side of things. Let's talk about probably one of the biggest games of the week. Buffalo versus Pittsburgh. 23-16. Pittsburgh pulled this out. Pittsburgh's defense was really, really good. The offense was not good, but they found a way to win it. That's sort of probably how Pittsburgh's going to be able to have to win games this year. I mean, you look overall at the total yards. Buffalo had 370 to Pittsburgh's 252. There was a punt block in this game. Buffalo did not manage their sort of territories in the red zone very well, and just couldn't find points. And Pittsburgh managed to hang around, made a couple plays, and won this game. But what do you make of this one?
I mean, I thought it was a pretty entertaining game. I thought it was going to be a very telling game as far as, where the power struggle lied in the AFC. Last season we saw the Steelers as the last undefeated team in the AFC and in the NFL. And Buffalo Bills, obviously, we know the story there. They made a lot of noise going into the playoffs, win their division. And Josh Allen even, there were murmurs out there about MVP. All that being said, I think we had very high hopes and expectations for the Bills this season. And, everyone other than you was probably slightly down, or at least trending downwards on the Pittsburgh Steelers. You seem to be talking them up during our preview show and things like that. So kudos to you for kind of seeing this. I don't know if you saw this coming or not, but, you at least thought the potential was there. But as you mentioned it, special teams and defense, that's the reason why the Pittsburgh Steelers came away with that win. They did enough to hold that, potent Bills offense and keep them under check. But I'm not going to, downgrade the Bills over this. And I think Pittsburgh deserves some sort of upgrade, but I don't think we should put too much stock into this win. It's a good win, and you move forward. They needed to win this game. As we mentioned earlier, when we were talking about the over and the under total for the season, there were certain games that were could have gone either way. With them winning this game, I think that they get close to the possibility of actually going on that over.
Yeah. You mentioned it. I don't downgrade the Bills on this. Now, there are pundits who are like, I thought the Steelers probably the best defense in the NFL. The Rams probably have the most explosive defense, but I think the Steelers defense is just a pain to play. And tough loss, but Pittsburgh found its way. I will say there were more concerns on the offensive side of things for Pittsburgh than I thought. Ben did not look great. I mean, he didn't look bad, but it looked more of the same of dump pass. That there's just, it's looking, more and more like Drew Brees, like those last couple years, where you just can't get the ball, on those 12, 15, 20-yard routes. It's all short. They weren't able to get Najee Harris going. The line couldn't block at all. They did find ways to get points, and they won the game. But it's going to be hard, to do that every week, find ways to get points points. You can't rely on block punts to get you points every week in the NFL. So I think I am positive on this Pittsburgh Steelers defense, thinking it's going to be able to dominate games. But I come away a little more nervous on the offensive side of things. We'll see how that gels going forward. Buffalo, tough game, couldn't find ways to put balls in the end zone. The only thing I'd say that's a little bit scary, last year they were the highest pass percentage team. That seemed to trend again. They threw 51 times in this game, and it wasn't even like the running game was all that bad. Singletary was pretty solid. He had 11 carries for 72 yards. Allen had his 9 for 44. It just seems like they could lean on that a little bit more instead of, winging it all over the place all the time. But, that's their style of play. I don't think that's going to change too much. So I just probably would like to see that come down, be a little bit more 38 to 45, depending on the situation, then upwards into that 50s, especially in a low scoring game where it's like 23-16 here.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at those pass attempts, you would probably assume that it was a really high scoring game, but obviously defensively, both teams,
especially when they were winning the whole game until the last part of the fourth quarter.
Yeah, well, defense, special teams that obviously you could see which one had the better one this particular Sunday. But again, I'm not taking anything away from Buffalo. I do give a little bit of credit to that Steelers defense and that Steelers special teams and the coaching staff. They obviously put together a good game plan to attack this Bills offense.
Yeah. All right. The next game, San Francisco versus Detroit. This was a blowout, and then it wasn't. I know you texted me that the charmed lady in your life somehow managed to get the nice little Detroit Lions cover in this one. I mean, I can read you the stats, but I think they're a little off from what the game actually entailed until basically the last 2 minutes of the game. I thought San Francisco played really, really well for the first, 3.5 quarters. And then it looked like they shut down. And then all of a sudden they were in a little bit of a panic mode because Detroit was driving down with a chance to tie the game. But what'd you make of this one? 41-33 for Detroit. Mostert gets hurt, done for the year. That's a little sad, but we mentioned in our preseason preview that the Niners can sort of replace backs pretty easy here.
Yeah, as I'm watching sports media today, I hear all this talk about the Niners have fallen a few steps because with Mostert out, they're a different team. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, last season, they kept swapping guys in and out of the lineup.
Yeah, Elijah Mitchell, rookie out of Lafayette, came in and ran for 104 yards. And that doesn't even count the rookie Trey Sermon, who will get time too.
Listen, we mentioned it last season. We mentioned it postseason. We mentioned it preseason. The Niners are one of the few teams that have a plug-and-play type of, system where the next man up line really comes into effect. I think that they're just really well coached. They put together the type of game plan that suits the players that are going to be in the game. Because I know they played poorly last season, but we saw a lot of toughness out of them. And I think the expectation for them are a little higher this season, with drafts and free agent acquisitions and healthy players coming back. I think that San Francisco really left their foot off the gas. They were dominating this game pretty much from the beginning till just about, the third quarter. I do want to kind of give a shout out to Jared Goff, even though he didn't play great. I felt like he was very poised. There were a few times when he did look like Jared Goff of LA, but the Lions, it's almost like they wanted to make a statement. This was their chance to say, we're not going to be a laughing stock. And, say what you want to say about Jared Goff. He is a team, and he is an NFC champion quarterback. He did lead his team to a Super Bowl. So there's potential there. I think it's probably a better note for the Lions that they had a chance to at least keep up with one of the teams we believe is going to be a good team. The Niners, I'm not concerned about the injuries. I think they're going to be okay. I think they just need to really implement. I know they haven't been together for a long time, so it's hard to build that unity, that chemistry. but they need to learn how to close out games.
Yeah, that would be the only thing. They need to close. This thing shouldn't even have been anywhere near that line. But, I will say Detroit played hard throughout. That might cost them draft picks, but it probably will get them a couple wins, throughout the year, where teams come in and, San Francisco shuts it down in the fourth quarter. And then all of a sudden you're randomly in a game that nobody was paying attention to after the second quarter. So, it'll be interesting to see how these Lions progress throughout the year. If they continue to play hard, if they can sneak a couple wins. I thought Swift and Williams ran pretty well and were dangerous out of the backfield. We mentioned they have no receivers, and that bears fruit. Hockenstein, Swift, Williams, their three leading receivers, a tight end and two running backs. I look for that to be similar throughout the year, but anyway, I thought the Niners played well. They have just loads of talent. Debo, Kittle, they set Ayuk because of disturbing I don't know what him and Sermon did bad things or showed up late. I don't know, but those two will be back in the coming weeks. Elijah Mitchell came in, filled in well. Garoppolo, I thought, played pretty well. They snuck Lance in there for a sneaky little trick play touchdown. So we'll see. Niners get the win and pretty good here. All right, next game up, the Battle of Losers. Though I say that, and Houston is now the number one team in the AFC South. So who am I to judge? Maybe they win it all. But Houston won 37-21. Jags looked sloppy and bad in the first half. Got some token stuff in the second half. Texans took advantage, beat up on a pretty bad Jags defense, and won this game.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much to say. It was nice to see the first round pick. I saw some things that made him, obviously tell you why he was the first round pick, but I also see a lot of room for growth, a lot of room for learning and developing. I think he's got some ways to go before he can fully blossom to the quarterback that everyone expects him to be. But, kudos to Houston. I think a lot of people were really overlooking them. We all kind of expect them to be the worst team this season, and so far, they're not one of the worst teams this season. They're up there with all the winners, with the top half of the league.
Yeah, the only thing I have a complaint about is I went to Michael's to go pick up an item at halftime of these games, and I'm driving there, and I have this ESPN show on, Sirius XM. They're doing their little Red Zone show, and who's ever hosting this show this year, it's like a married couple, and they were like, "How come Trevor Lawrence isn't doing good?" And I'm like, "What in the world?" This Jaguars team won one game last year. Trevor Lawrence is starting his first game as a rookie.
With a new head coach.
With a new head coach. And I'm like, do these people not know the level jump from college to pros? And these are professional media people. And that's the only thing that Trevor Lawrence is probably not going to be all that great this year. He did throw for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. He did throw 3 picks in there, but to play in the pros, it's very difficult. You know who was a good college player? Tyrod Taylor. Yeah.
Matt Leinart.
Yeah. You know who was also a good college player? Mark Ingram. He won a Heisman Trophy. The other side has all pro players too, all who were great in college. Everybody is really, really good. The difference between highest level and the last man on a roster is not that big. It's big in college. It's even bigger in high school. But by this level, it's just, you can't expect this Jaguars team to come out the gate and start throwing up 600-yard offensive performance and then shutting people down. They won one game last year. They were in games, but they weren't that good a team. So whatever people are expecting, and I'm one who thinks the Jags might win some games this year, but I think they'll win games on the back end of the schedule, not on the front end of the schedule. And that's the only thing that really bothered me was listening to ESPN Red Zone and asking why Trevor Lawrence wasn't doing better. He's a rookie in his first game with playing against professionals. This isn't the Citadel he is going up against with a team full of NFL players.
I will say I do have a little bit of a pet peeve, which I'll probably bring up later on.
All right. Next up, Cleveland Browns, Kansas City Chiefs. Cleveland had this game until the Kansas City Chiefs did their little thing where they try for 5 minutes, score about 23 points in a 5-minute stretch, and pulled this game out. It was an entertaining game. I thought Cleveland played pretty well until that last quarter, but Chiefs are the Chiefs, and when they hit that turbo boost button, they're just hard to stop.
Yeah, I mean, I really didn't think that the Browns were going to find a way to win this game. I thought they could, but I didn't think they would. The Chiefs, even when they're on autopilot, they seem to be able to turn it on almost like on a dime. It's amazing how good this team can be, which is a little bit shocking when you look at last year's Super Bowl and kind of see the way that turned out, because it wasn't the same team, at least in my opinion. I can't take anything away from either team. I think both teams played a solid game, especially for it being week one. And I'm excited to see both teams going forward. I think both teams show a lot of potential. They both showed, like they have a lot of weapons on offense and even some weapons on defense. And I'm excited to see what they do going forward.
Yeah, the only thing I wanted to ask you a question about this, this game played out a lot like their playoff game there. If Cleveland really, really wants to sort of get to that level where the Chiefs are trying to compete for Super Bowls, I'm just curious. Baker had the ball to drive down and sort of win him the game. Did you have any faith that he was going to drive down and win him that game?
Okay, so I and this is not a knock on Baker. I think he's a good quarterback. I just don't think he's that type of quarterback. I know that he's made some very explosive plays back in college, but this is in college, as you mentioned in the previous review. Everybody's good in the NFL. Even the bad teams have good players, and it's just a matter of fit. I don't see him as that type of quarterback. I don't see him as the type of quarterback that's going to, win you a game late, with his arm. I think he's the type of quarterback that has to use his head and kind of read scenarios. He's got a couple of really good backs, in his backfield. I also think that not having his other weapon at the skill at wideout, Odell Beckham not being there, I think really put a damper on what he could do, because I think he's a different player. He's a more confident player when he has all his weapons to play with, all his toys to play with. But that just wasn't the case. And I personally wouldn't want him leading my team on a victory drive. But, that's not to say he's not capable of it.
Yeah, it just makes me a little nervous. I just wonder. I mean, I don't take a lot from this loss, but I think this team will be in the playoffs. But when you get in that situation in the playoffs and he has the ball, he needs to drive you down in that 2-minute situation to win you the game. I don't know if he can do that. I know Patrick Mahomes can do that. I know Tom Brady can do that. I know Aaron Rodgers can do that. I even see Garoppolo has done that. Russell Wilson, we know, has done that. So I just wonder if that position needs to really, really be upgraded for this Cleveland Browns team to be more than just a playoff team, to be, say, like, Cincinnati in the mid 2000s. They were always making the playoffs. They were a very good team with, AJ Green and company, had a good defense like Cleveland does. But then they got in the playoff games and you never really believed they were going to make a run and win playoff games.
You're always going to have teams like that. I think that, but, to play devil's advocate here, you have other teams where their quarterback is, at best a game manager, and, with defense and scheme, they can go all the way. And I'm looking at the Ravens here, for example. They didn't have the greatest quarterback when they won the Super Bowl. That team was led by its defense and by its head coach. And I think you can win like that. It's just very, very hard. And when you have a guy who solidified himself, not just with his teammates in the locker room, but with the community itself, it seems like Cleveland is really behind Baker. They believe that he's the guy that's going to lead them to the promised line. It's really hard to move on from someone like that to someone else who still hasn't proven anything. At least Baker has proven the fact that he can lead his team to the playoffs.
Yeah. All right. Last game of the week. It bordered Atlanta for the worst game of the week. Anyway, Saints won 38-3 in this one. Saints looked pretty good, ran the ball great. Jameis was controlled and disciplined. I don't think the Packers knew the season has started. So what'd you make of this one? I don't know what sort of analysis we can do. The Packers were not there this week. Saints rolled them.
I will say this, okay? Go back to last season's show when Brees was out and the big debate. Is it going to be Winston? Is it going to be Hill? Who's going to be the starter? I remember a certain person that came out and said, I believe, even against everybody else who kept talking about Hill, he's so explosive, he can do this, he can do that. I remember one guy that went against the grain, and that guy stood tall for what he believed, and he believed that Winston was the guy. Okay.
Well, I hate to inform you, but if Taysom Hill had been the quarterback, they still would have won this game.
Listen, I'm going to get into it in a little bit, but because this game might come up as we go forward in the show, but I thought that the Saints did a really good job. I did not see this coming. I thought that the Saints still had too many questions to answer to themselves as far as what kind of team they were going to be. And I thought that Green Bay was just too good based off of last season's results. So I did not see this outcome happening. It actually shocked me. I'll say that. I'll go as far as to say I was shocked. But I do want to give kudos and respect to the Saints and their organization. They came out and even, on a home game where they really weren't at home, they took care of business. And that's tough to do against a tough opponent. They made him look like the Cleveland Browns of 5-6 years ago.
Yeah. I thought the offense looked really, really balanced for the Saints. I think more than anything, I came away with the Saints defense looked pretty good. And they had some losses on that side of the ball, but their pass rush looked solid. Their secondary looked good. So if that Saints defense can maintain, I think Sean Payton could scheme his way with essentially anyone playing quarterback. I think he's only lost like 2 games that Breeze hadn't played in. If you quote unquote count this one as one Breeze hasn't played in, I was impressed with the Saints, but it's really hard for me to totally gauge because the Packers just weren't there at all. So good win for the Saints. Packers, I don't know what you say. I'm a little bit on the Rodgers side of things here of it's game 1 in a 17-game season. LaFleur was a little more, doom and gloom. That would be my, yeah, I know that's sort of his job, but it does seem like there's a little bit of a bad juju. I mentioned the Vikings, no one liking each other. I think the Packers like each other a little more, but there's a little bit of a bad juju sort of hovering around that team right now.
Yeah, I don't know how much of it has to do with the holdout situation with Aaron Rodgers or them, kind of basically saying that we're getting ready to move on to the next guy. Because I was trying to find the story. I saw it as I was scrolling. Something that had to do with Aaron Rodgers basically telling the team and the coach, you drafted him to replace me, then replace me. Where I believe the headlines are, obviously a lot of the stuff is, clickbait. But I don't know. We talked about it. I want to see how this game went more to kind of see what the relationship between Aaron Rodgers and the Packers organization was. And of course, there's all these conspiracy theories out there that he came back just to ruin the Packers season. It's week 1. And in the words of Aaron Rodgers, relax. Okay. It's a long season. It's an extended season. I don't put too much into this loss. You just take your lumps and move on. Kudos to the Saints. They came out, they handled business. I think Sean Payton, as good of a coach as we know he is, I think he's still somewhat underrated. He's really good at scheming and coming up with plans to beat teams, even when you don't expect it, with guys that were irrelevant a year ago.
Yeah. All right. So that wraps up our week 1 in the books. Pretty entertaining week 1. We'll see how week 2 progresses this week. We'll get into a little bit the Thursday game, which is the Washington football team this week, playing the who were they playing? Now I'm blanking. Giants. There we go. I knew it was one of the NFC East. I couldn't remember if it was the Giants or the Eagles. Washington football team playing the New York Giants, both coming off a disappointing opening week. I guess Heineke will be the quarterback. The spread is 3.5 for Washington here. What do you make of this game?
You know me, I've got a little thing going on, a little love affair with the Giants, especially on the offense side of the ball. I think that the injury to Fitzpatrick probably changes things a little bit in Washington. I thought that he was definitely, even though he's not a great quarterback, more of a journeyman, I thought that he was still heads above all the other guys as far as talent was concerned. So I think this puts a strain on the offense. You're going to have to really rely on the run game a lot more. And I think that it's going to become a little too obvious as far as what that team offensively can do. They're going to have to rely on their defense a lot, which can't show up every single game. So I kind of like the Giants in this one, especially when they're getting points.
Yeah, I don't love the line of Washington, but I think Washington will come away with a win on this short week home game. So I don't have a bet per se right now. So I think Washington will come away with a win, but 3.5 seems a bit large for me.
I mean, every single person I've asked, they're thinking that Washington is probably going to take this game. I don't know why. I know I'm crazy, and I'm probably going to be the only person, but like I said, I like New York in this one.
Yeah. All right. We'll move to our best and worst of the week. So on the offensive side of things, where are you going on the best?
Okay, well, for best of the week on offense, not the sexiest pick, not the most flashy one, but I thought very deserving. And I'm going with Jameis Winston, quarterback of the New Orleans Saints. I thought that he was a very efficient 14 of 20. I believe he threw for 150 yards, something like that. But he also threw 5 touchdowns. So the numbers aren't crazy, but super efficient. And, when he had his opportunities to get the ball in the end zone, he got into the end zone, which is what you need to do, especially against a really great and potent offense that Green Bay shows that they could really at any point come in and score 30 on you. So the fact that he was able to get the ball into the end zone was, really good for him and his team, a good sign going forward. I thought that after basically a year off and coming off of one of the worst seasons of his career with all those interceptions, I thought that this was a feel-good story for him, and I thought he deserved a shout-out, him and his LASIK doctor.
Yeah, I'm going with Jalen Hurts. I thought it was a really, really good game for Jalen Hurts. He sort of showed in this one that he might be able to play quarterback in the NFL. I thought the Eagles did a really, really good job of sort of tailoring the offense to him. So I'm going with Jalen Hurts as my offensive player of the week. On the defensive side of things, where are you going?
Most of the time for defense, I like to try to get an entire unit just because a lot of these guys don't get love, except for the Aaron Donalds and the JJ Watts of the world. So with that being said, I wanted to do an entire team, but I thought that this individual deserved to be mentioned on his own. Chandler Jones from Arizona. He obviously had a monster game, and I don't know how much that had to do with the fact that the Titans just couldn't stop anybody. They couldn't stop a nosebleed. But I thought that regardless, this is professional football, and people do get paid to stop him. He was able to get to the quarterback, and obviously the score shows what kind of effect that had. So he's my best of the week for defense.
Yeah, we're on the same wavelength here. I went with Chandler Jones as well. 5 sacks in a game. I don't think anyone can even come close to that. So Chandler Jones playing for a very large contract next season. My defensive player of the week. So do you got a coach of the week?
I do have a coach of the week. For best coach of the week, I went with Mike Tomlin. I know it's only one game, but he beat a team that many predicted to possibly win it all. So I think it's a good step going forward, especially the way they had to win, where it wasn't just offense and it wasn't just defense. It was a complete team win, literally a complete team win. So I thought Tomlin deserved a little bit of credit week one.
Yeah. Well, you're going to like this one. I'm going with Zach Taylor of the Cincinnati Bengals. We were pretty hard on him last year, and I don't think either of us thought he was all that great a coach, but he seemed to come out and show some balance, really ran that offensive side of things really, really well. Joe Burrow only got murdered about 5 or 6 times in this game instead of the 15 times last year. I mean, the Bengals offensive line is still very, very poor, and the Vikings were very poor on defense. But anyway, Zach Taylor, good game plan, balance, maybe showed a little bit of knowing that he needed to scale back a little bit from last year. So Zach Taylor is my coach of the week.
Do you know how you counter an offensive line that can't block for your quarterback? You run the ball. But anyways, let's move on to the worst of the week.
All right, let's move on to the worst of the week. And where are you going on the offensive side of things?
You know, on offense, I think it's no surprise when I say this, but I'm going with the former MVP, Aaron Rodgers, who went 15 of 28 for 133 yards and 2 interceptions. He didn't throw a single touchdown. And I know that a lot of people assumed this New Orleans defense was going to be a lot weaker than they were last year. But we mentioned that they had the possibility of being just as good as they were last season, which was really good, especially when Brees was out. And they completely shut Aaron Rodgers down. There was nothing to celebrate here. It was just a really bad game for him. And I know that it's only week 1, but we have to pick somebody. And to me, he's the worst of the week.
Yeah, I got one from the Thursday game, and I'm going with Zeke Elliott. We had to hear a lot of noise about how he slimmed down and lost weight. It didn't seem to factor too much in that Tampa Bay game. It still looks a little bit like Tony Pollard hits those holes a little harder and a little faster, and it was just a bad game for Zeke. Now, some of that has to do with the Cowboys as well. It doesn't all sit on him, but I thought he was really, really poor. And then you look at his grades overall, and he was the sort of worst running back of the week as well. So Zeke Elliott is my worst of the week on the offensive side of things. All right, what do you got on the defensive side of things here?
You know, on defense, I'm going to go with the team this time around because I was really disappointed with this team as a whole. And that's the Falcons defensive unit. You know,
you can't use them every week.
Oh, if they play like this, I'm going to. It's going to be hard not to. But they went up against a team that, they've got their quarterback, for the first time in a while where they know who the guy is. They got a new head coach, and this team is supposed to be finding its identity. The Falcons, on the other hand, were a team that showed promise. They showed really potent offense at the beginning of last year. They showed really potent defense at the end of last year. And they drafted one of the better prospects in college this draft. So a lot of us had really high expectations for them as far as this particular game was. And they blew it. They couldn't compete. They couldn't stop them. So I felt like as a unit, they probably deserved it because the situation that they were in, it should have been a win for them. They should have been able to handle business, and they didn't. So the Falcons defense, worst of the week.
Yeah, I'm going to go with a player on this side of things, and I'm going with DeForest Buckner. He's the 3rd highest paid defensive lineman. Just did not anchor that Colts defense very, very well. And really, I just thought had a poor game. He needs to play better, and this Colts defense needs to play better to sort of let this offense find its way into the season. And I just thought he had a poor game for what he is intended to be for the Indianapolis Colts. So I'm going to DeForest Buckner. On the coaching side of things, where are you going?
Okay, now this is not going to be a popular one because I know that there are several other coaches that deserve the nod this week. Okay, so it's even though it's unpopular, I'm going with Coach Urban Meyer, and for this one simple reason, my pet peeve: he had one job, and that was to instill a little bit of confidence in your first round pick. You know, you're going up against a team that a lot of people predict to be the worst team in the league, not just this season, but probably for the next couple of seasons. And they smacked you around and you did nothing about it. It's like when your big brother pins you on the ground and says, stop hitting yourself, stop hitting yourself. And they just couldn't get the big brother off. And that's what it seemed like. You know, this is Houston we're talking about. What team is supposed to be really, really bad. They came out and they made the Jaguars look like the worst team. So for that reason, Coach Urban Meyer, worst of the week.
It's a tough one to give to an opening day coach. I'm going with a more seasoned vet, and I'm going with Mike Zimmer. This Minnesota thing looks like it's sliding downhill fast. I don't know if it's all his fault. He did not wasn't the one to choose to pay Kirk Cousins a whole lot of money to quarterback this team, but he's the one in charge of running it, and to go into Cincinnati, who we pretty much know is going to be a poor team, and you thinking you have aspirations for the playoffs, and losing that game, I think the ice is getting thin there, and I will be very interested if he can make it through the year. But my coach, Mike Zimmer, is the worst of the week this week. All right, that wraps things up for week 1. We'll be back on Friday to make our picks and previews of week 2. Be sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss any of our content here on Greenlight Network. We got our college football picks coming up. There's going to be a soccer pod coming up after the first week of Champions League wraps up on the know-it-all side of things. Winning Daily will still be popping up as we get closer and closer to football during the week, and that's where you don't want to miss anything. Achilles, where can we find you?
As always, you can find me on Twitter at TD Achilles.
All right, that's our show, and we're out.